Hi, I'm Tamar. You're tuned in to Soul Therapy Podcast, where we will explore and talk about what it's like being a business owner as a woman, fashion, art, what it's like being an immigrant, travel, and so much more. I invite you to join me in my journey. Salam, everyone. This is Tamar with Soul Therapy Podcast. Joining me today is my wonderful friend and customer of 10 years. Excuse me, I'm still dealing with a cold, don't judge me. Dr. Ryland Gore, who is an Atlanta-based breast cancer oncologist. She has a phenomenal credential. I'm going to let her tell you. But we have so many things to talk about.
Yes.
I've known you for 10 years now, and we have talked about so many things. I would love to start by knowing a little about you. Well, not for me, for the viewers, but to talk about your childhood, where you were born, where you're from, and where you were raised.
So I'm an Atlanta girl. I'm from here. There's very few of us in
So I keep
2024.
hearing.
But I was born here, North Side, baby. I was born at North Side Hospital and grew up in Decatur and Stone Mountain. My father was originally from Atlanta. My mom was from Talladega, Alabama, actually, but they met in Nashville at Tennessee State University. So they were college sweethearts.
Nice.
And moved back here after college. And so I'm from here. I've lived all over the place, but this is home. And so even coming back off of training, it was a natural decision to come back home and take care of the patients and the women here. So,
oh my God, I can't wait to get into this. If you know me, you're very invested in Black women's care in the medical field and the healthcare. And me and you have had many conversations about this. But before we get to that, I would love to know, at what age did you say to yourself, oh, I want to be a doctor? Or what did you want to be when you were a little girl?
So, I think it's, first of all, I just want to say it's dumb. When teachers, you're 4 years old, you're like 4 or 5 years old, right? And they're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? This person just licks the floor. Like, they don't know what they want to be when they grow up. Okay.
Just say this person licks the floor.
It's like, I don't know. I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to do hair.
Oh,
I'm going to be a lawyer. But as you get a little bit older, 6, 7, 8, some of these things start to cement in your mind. Like, what could I possibly be good at? I always thought that I started saying I wanted to be a doctor when I was like 11 or 12 or maybe even 10. But somebody that I know from my church who has literally known me my whole life reminded me that I was running around church talking about I wanted to be a doctor even at like 7. And so
interesting.
I don't know where that came from, but it got rooted in my mind and I kind of stuck with it. And I don't know. I feel like the only Black doctor I saw growing up was Heathcliff Huxtable on The Cosby Show.
Yeah.
And so that was like my first example of upper class Black people doing something and they're professionals. She's an attorney, he's a doctor, and I don't know. And then his practice was in his house. All he had to do was go downstairs. I was like,
the basement. I don't know.
I can do this, and so I was told that I actually started saying I wanted to be a doctor starting at 7 or 8.
Wow.
Years old. But I know for me, by the time I was like 10, 11, so I'm 5th grade, 6th grade, I knew for a fact I was going to be a doctor. And so I feel like every single step that I've taken from that point on has been extremely strategic, even as it comes to school and all of that. And I've stuck with it.
I'm not doubting it one bit because I know exactly how you operate now as an adult. So if I'm can only
very
imagine
laser focused, and I feel like I was even more laser focused as a kid. And when you're a kid, you believe you can do everything, right? And you have the confidence. Like nobody ever told me I couldn't.
Right.
And so I felt like I could do anything. And so it was very definitive for me. Like I'm going to be a doctor, and that was the end of the conversation for me.
When did you know what type of doctor you wanted to be?
So, funny enough, my baby sister, we're 12 years apart. My mom actually wanted us to be there to experience that. And I will say her OB-GYN, who's since retired, maybe even passed, Dr. Engelhardt, he was also in Northside for a very long time. When my mom went into labor with her, he woke us up. He's like, come here, like very hands-on, like I want you to see what's going on. And I was like, that'd be cool. I think I'm going to deliver the babies. But then as you kind of go through high school or whatever, and I remember thinking, everybody is pregnant. Why is everybody pregnant? They're 14. Like, we don't know anything. I remember going to a friend's baby shower in high school, and I was in like 9th grade. And I remember my mom had such mixed emotions about that.
Wow.
And so I was like, we got to teach the women, we have to teach the children. And so I really dug into that. I'm going to be an OB-GYN or whatever. No.
Wow.
I got to med school, right? And I carried this
on.
Wait.
Listen, so wait, you were going to be into, you were going to go towards OB-GYN. I was going to be an OB-GYN.
Okay. And funny enough, again, I'm very strategic. And so after college, I went to DC. I got my master's in public health. My concentration is actually maternal and child health. So I'm very serious when I was like mapped out my life, right? And get to med school. Boom. You go through the first 2 years.
You went to med school where?
Morehouse School of Medicine.
I wanted all my Morehouse people, because you have a lot of Morehouse people at therapy. I love when y'all get together and the camaraderie. Listen, there's a few things I regret in life. Very few things. One of them is not going to a HBCU school.
That was my first HBCU.
It is one of my biggest regrets. And we're going to have a conversation about this on this podcast, because
that was one of the best things. All my schools up until that point had been PWIs. That was one of the best experiences of my life. And I still am very involved with things that go on at Morehouse School of Medicine. So first 2 years, you're in the classroom, you're learning things. This is the body, this is how it works, right? This is the good stuff, this is the bad stuff. And then you get to your 3rd year where you start doing your clinical rotation. So for Morehouse School of Medicine, that was at Grady. Love Grady. And so my first rotation, they actually let us pick the order. And I was like, I'm gonna do surgery first. Like, they're gonna be mean. It's gonna be hard. Like, it's gonna be terrible.
I'm gonna do surgery first.
So
let me how people operate. I'm gonna do surgery first.
So I'm like, let me do that rotation first, because I don't know if I'm gonna like it. Let me get it out the way. Let's be clear though. Every single thing I do, even like peds, I'm not trying to deal with the kids, but I treat everything. I was like, I'm gonna treat everything like this is something that I really want to do. I'm gonna put my all into it. And so even if on the inside I was cringing, you would never know. So did surgery first. On call the first day of the rotation, I was like, pause. I thought this was an orientation day. We ended up on call, on trauma call. Loved it. Had the time of my life. I decided on day 1 of my first rotation of my 3rd year that I was going to be a surgeon. Everybody's like, pump your brakes. You still have, 5, 6 other rotations to get through, and you haven't done OB-GYN yet. You would say you're going to be an OB-GYN. I was like, okay, that's fine for y'all, but I've made up my mind. Like, I'm going to be a surgeon. Get to OB-GYN.
That face says it all.
What a terrible experience. I was like, the people are great, but it's like, can we go to surgery? Can we do a C-section? No. So waiting for people to labor, and the only time I really enjoyed it is when we had OR cases. And so you have the gynecologic oncology. And so at that point, you're dealing with cancers. That's about the only time or a C-section. You really gone into surgery. There's other small things that are benign, but I just didn't enjoy it. And I was like, I cannot see myself doing a residency for 4 years. And then I thought, when I said I was going to be an OB-GYN, I was like, I want to do reproductive endocrinology and infertility. But I was like, I still got to go through 4 years of OB-GYN to even get to that point. And I'm not okay with that. And so I was right. Everybody else was wrong. I knew on day 1 of that surgery rotation, I was going to be a surgeon. And so the rest was history, kind of history.
That's so awesome. I remember I had, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what I called you about one time, or I texted you about. I disappeared for a little bit from work, and I was getting texts, from everyone saying, hey, we haven't seen you in a while. And what they didn't know at the time, and I'm not very open to talk about some personal things, but I think this is part of the problem, why we can't fix certain things, because we're not talking about it. I ended up getting super sick in my lower abdominal, and I was hunched over, and I was trying to figure it out. I kept going to my doctor, my OB-GYN at that time, and she said, oh, you have a very small fibroid. It's, 1 to 2 centimeters. It's going to dissolve itself. It's going to pop out. You're not even going to know it. And I said, okay. She said, you may feel a little uncomfortable, but that's normal. Cool. Months go by. I'm just hunched over, and everybody's kind of like, yo, you're walking kind of funny, or you're so funny. And I'm like, leave me alone, man. And it got to a point where it was so unbearable that I went back to her, and I was like in tears. And I said, I need you to do something. Something is going on. So she does her test, and then she was like, oh. She's like, I'm going to send you to ultrasound. Now she sends me there. The tests come back a couple of days later. She calls me in. I go to her office, and she's like, "Oh, so yeah, the fibroids have gone up. They're about 11 centimeters. For those of you that don't understand what 11 centimeters looks like, it is like the size of a baby's head, a new baby born's head. That's 11 centimeters. And that attached to someone's uterus and pulling you down is the most painful, excruciating thing you can ever feel." And she made it sound so simple. Like, it's just 11 centimeters, we're just going to remove it with the, surgery, blah, blah, blah. And, thank God works in always mysterious ways for me. And he comes through and brings his lights and gets things done. So I leave that insurance company I was with, and I was able to sign up the next month. This was in November. Sign up with another company in December. So I was able to register right away to look for someone else. I ended up in Emory. And Dr. Maria Shockley, she's probably so sick of me mentioning her name because I talk about her. And the reason why I talk about her is because I want to make sure, as we're talking about what we're going to get into, Dr. Shockley is a white woman. She's a white physician. She's a wonderful human being and a wonderful physician. And the care she gave me was phenomenal. For her to solve the problems I had. I had the surgery, I couldn't do anything for quite some time because of some complications, but everything ended up working out. But I remember calling you, and I said, because you texted me saying, "Hey, I haven't seen you in a while, what's going on?" And I was like, "I've been down, I had surgery," and you called me. And then I was telling you, you were like, "Why didn't you tell me about this? Why didn't you tell me?" And I was like, "Well, shoot, y'all come over there to release the stress. I'm not going to load you up with stress of mine." And when I mentioned to you I had fibroids and they missed it for quite some time, your response shocked me. And I don't know if I ever expressed it to you.
No, you didn't.
But it shocked me because to me it was kind of like, I knew exactly where the pain was. And I know fibroids are pretty normal. So don't come after me saying that fibroids happen all the time.
They're not normal. They're common. They're not normal.
Common.
Yes.
Wrong wording. They're common. I get that they're common. But you should never be in that excruciating pain. And I can take a beat down. If you know me, you know that I could really muster through a lot of pain, and I have high tolerance for pain. But this is a whole different level of pain. And when I mentioned it to you, you were like, "Oh yeah, that happens all the time." I said, "I'm sorry, what?" You're like, "Yeah, that happens all the time." And I hung up the phone, and I was like, "What does she mean it happens all the time?" Like, it's so common. So that conversation took us at a different day towards breast cancer, because I told you a friend of mine was diagnosed, and I was telling you about her and her struggles, and you were kind of telling me what to inform her with and what information to give her, and that was super helpful. And, she beat it, she's good. But I have a couple friends as we speak that are suffering, and of course your name comes up often. And they're like, "Man, I've talked to so many doctors at this point. Like, I just kind of say no. One, because it's exhausting, right? To hear from everybody else. But my way is always like, yo, I'm only mentioning her to say this because from someone that was medically neglected on several things, not just the fibroids, but on several things, which you and I have talked about, several different conversations, I felt like it was very important to speak to and about the Black woman and the care we receive or lack thereof when we go into the healthcare. And you and I, like I said, have talked about it extensively. But I think that's something that I would love to discuss. And that's why it was just really imperative that I brought you in, even though her schedule is absolutely crazy. It's like a 6 months appointment, and then it gets canceled on the 6 months, and you have to make another 6 months, big boss lady over here. But, but I would love for you, because I know you're a huge advocate of that too. So I would love for you to touch on the need for us Black women to check, to do our yearly annual, breast check, exam and mammogram. And also, at what age should it start? Because I think it hits us differently than other races, and to a certain degree, right?
It does. So as far as the numbers go, 1 in 8 women, period, across the board, regardless of race, will be diagnosed with breast cancer. So that's about 13%. And so just look around. Look at your business one night and how many women are there. Count them all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Tag your it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Tag your it. So it's very common. 300,000 new cases of invasive breast cancer each year, over 50,000 cases of non-invasive breast cancer. I think it's important for us to know the stats about Black women, though, because I feel like across the board, Black people get the short end of the stick. Black women are diagnosed at the same rates as white women, but we are 40% more likely to die from breast cancer. We're more likely to have the most aggressive form of breast cancer, which is triple negative breast cancer. Um, we're more likely to be diagnosed under the age of 40. So it's a serious situation.
Wow.
And going back, the people I've taken care of here, the people I've taken care of, out of state, with all different things I do, it's remarkable. It's remarkable how much people don't know. It's
Yeah.
remarkable how much people ignore. Um, it's been wild, actually. The youngest patient, she was Black, that I diagnosed. She was 19 at the time of
Oh my
diagnosis.
God.
And so it's very serious. I'm a huge advocate of pushing for yourself, advocating for yourself. We saw this really blow up during COVID, right? Because the only thing the hospitals was thinking about was COVID, but real health issues are still happening in spite of COVID. I had a patient who showed up to the ER 3 times. She was told she had an infection, even though there's no bug bite. She's not breastfeeding. There's no reason for a breast infection. It was actually cancer. It was actually breast cancer. It was completely overlooked. And she ended up being stage 3 by the time it was done because so many months had gone by. And she's doing fantastic now. She's an amazing, just phenomenal human being. I do find that my Black patients are so resilient. But why do we have to be so freaking resilient and so strong all the time? And so please get screened. The age average risk, meaning you don't have a family history, you don't have other things going on that puts you at an increased risk for breast cancer. You should start at 40. But guidelines did come out in 2018 strongly suggesting that Black women and Hispanic women should probably start their screening mammograms at 35 instead of 40 because we are more likely to be diagnosed before the age of 40. This should happen every year, every single year. Ultrasound is not an alternative to mammogram. It's used as an adjunct because there are things that you can see on mammogram that you won't see on other imaging studies. And I always tell patients, if you feel something, say something. But honestly, if I feel something, it's you're probably already at least a stage 2, right? Like if I can feel your cancer. And so it's so important to get this taken care of. If you believe something is going on and somebody says, you're too young, no. In my mind,
Say something.
In my mind, it's cancer until proven otherwise, not the opposite. It's not something good until it gets
because
so bad.
It's so severe.
It gets so bad.
Yeah.
So bad.
So fast.
Very quickly. Very quickly. And so, it's something I feel so strongly about. And there are times when, I have to fight other people, whether it's insurance or fight another physician, like, no, this has to happen. I'm very concerned for XYZ reason. And so
I would love for you to
I
tell
feel very
a
strongly
story.
about.
I would love for you to tell a story. You told me about how there was someone that came in and a physician didn't want to treat them because of the insurance, and you fought to get.
I don't even know what story this is. I feel like I've told you so many
much.
stories, and I feel like
it was. I know it was a woman in her early 30s.
It happens so much.
You guys, this is scary. It's super scary.
I know.
It's super scary. And when I say, the stories told me or whatever.
I'm like, what story?
I know.
I don't know what story I told you. I probably told you the stories.
You have.
Because every day it just blows my mind, some of the things.
But to be turned away from a hospital or a physician's office that could possibly save your life, but you're being turned away because you don't have the insurance. And I understand the business aspect of it. I totally get it. However, America's supposed to be the most powerful country in the world. Why are we still struggling with this where women are dying and people are dying from medical, not receiving the proper medical help? I'm still stuck on 1 in 8, and I keep hearing this number, and I heard it not too long ago from a CNN anchor lady.
Yeah, but she was just newly diagnosed. She's stage 3. I know exactly what you're talking about. And
I'm counting my friends.
And we're more likely to be diagnosed at later stages than,
because it's missed often.
Because it can be missed, or let's be real, sometimes we feel something and we ignore it, right? Or we say, can't be. I think it's just it's the perfect storm of like so many things, whether it's I felt this for 3, 4 months. I saw a patient last week. Oh, it's been there for like 6 months, but I thought it would go away. And then by the time you get to your doctor, because most of the time you need a referral, right? Even though the truth of the matter is for a screening mammogram, you shouldn't need a referral. This is something that should just happen anyway, right? Like insurance pays for a screening mammogram, and even if you don't have insurance,
reminds you,
there are
at least mine does.
there are plenty of places that are self-paid. That's a whole other thing where we can talk about the quality of independent radiology centers and who benefits and who doesn't.
We should definitely talk about that.
But like, it's a screening mammogram should happen. But by the time you go to your doctor, right, you get the referral. So now you have an order. But you're not the only person that needs a screening mammogram. There's millions of women that need a screening mammogram. So now you have to wait however many weeks or whatever you need to wait, right? And then you get the results happen. But did you get the results? Because we do know that from screening all the way to survivorship, Black women are at a disadvantage. And so we're more likely to have a delay in receiving results and a delay in diagnosis.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's just so many things that play into it that contribute to the disparities we see.
What is the percentage of women that come to your clinic or practice that you've noticed age-wise, right? And then at what level of their stage are they in for cancer? So how much of them are coming in at stage 3 versus stage 1? You know, that's a tough one.
That's a tough one. I would say, I'm like looking off in the space. I'm like,
I figured.
My patients who are likely to be stage 1 are more likely to be white, and they're more likely to be older. So 60s, 70s, or whatever. My younger patients, they are usually stage 2 or stage 3. I've had quite a few stage 4s recently where I know I won't be able to do anything. But
once they hit stage 4, it's kind of
stage 4, unless the metastasis is like a single one in the bone or something like that, where you can probably clear it pretty easily with chemo, then you're not going to be treated for curative intent because you're stage 4. So it's usually palliative. But one thing I love, you want to know one thing I love about what I do, and that I specifically focus on breast, because even with some of the sad cases, even with some of the stage 3s that are so far gone that you were like, you breathe on this person funny and it's going to turn into a stage 4. Wow. What I love about breast is that in general, those patients do very well. It's not like when I was going through surgery residency and you're seeing pancreatic cancer, you're seeing the bad colon cancers, you're seeing, horrible liver cancers. It's not like that. And so even as a stage 4, even though those patients who do well and live for a while are more likely to be older and white, you can still have a very fulfilling life. I mean, we see the commercials for the drugs for, metastatic breast cancer, right? And they're like leaping through fields, and they over here,
not leaping.
What's the movie Ghost? What are they doing? Stuff with the pottery. They doing stuff with clay and stuff. They're just living their best lives on these commercials. And you're like, wow, really? So
we all know her personality is not part of her.
They do well. Like in general, they do well. Even my young ones who come through the door and I'm like, what is this? Like, why? Like, why me? Why today? I love that, they do well. Have I been to a couple funerals for patients? Yeah.
I know you have, because that part is hard. Crying, so
that part is hard.
For those of you that assume all doctors have no souls, I'm going to tell you right now, this one has come through my door a few times, sobbing and not wanting to talk about it, but then want you to sit down and talk to her. So I think from a patient perspective, right, you want the human side of the doctor to come out. And I think we're so used to being programmed to think of you guys as the doctors. And in fairness, it's not an easy job.
I've cried with patients. I've prayed with patients. And I love what I do. Like, yeah, it can be sad. Yeah, it sucks sometimes or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I try to leave it at the door. I try not to bring it home with me or whatever.
Yeah, so you bring it to me.
Ooh. But I love what I do. And I think that makes the difference. Any doctor you choose, whatever specialty you choose. And so I'm a big fan of patients advocating for themselves and curating a team that you can be proud of, whether it's your primary care, your therapist, any other specialty care you need. If you're not feeling it, or if the vibe is off, or you're not like, go and go somewhere else, go investigate, go get another doctor and say, hey, even if it's a second opinion, who cares? I've had patients who've come to me and they're like, not that I don't trust you, doc, but I'm gonna get a second opinion. I would say 95% of the time, those patients who sought a second opinion always come back. I think they know authenticity when they see it. I think they know patients aren't dumb. They know people who care when they see it. And it's a hard thing to do. Specifically for Black women. We were talking about this a little bit earlier off screen, especially during COVID. I think it was so important for people to curate a team that looked like them, because it's like, I know I am more likely. Doesn't guarantee that the care is going to be 100%. No, but I am more likely to be taken seriously. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. However, if the person that cares for you and has been down for you forever, or listens to you, happens to not look like you, that is okay too. You don't have to go firing everybody just because you want an all Black team. If your team happens to be all Black,
your decision has to be based on your personal experience with each person and your personal experience from beginning to end. On some of my medical stuff that I've dealt with, I've had doctors that called me, off, just on their own to say, hey, how do you feel? The last time I saw you, you weren't feeling good, or you didn't look good, or whatever. And I've had doctors that I've messaged and then never responded back to me until like the third, fourth week. So it really just depends. I pray that when women in general, are faced with these kind of decisions, that God leads them into a caretaker that really signed up and got sworn into office to care for human beings the same way they would care for their mom or their child or their siblings, Medical.
It's so funny you say that. I take that with me, because I'm like, dealing with breast cancer, I'm like, this could easily at some point be me. Like, this could be me, my mom, my sister, my aunts. It was my aunt. And so
talk to me about that as a surgeon, because you and I have talked about it, but obviously I want to bring it to the table.
Yeah.
What that was like for you, as your aunt was going through this.
Very
and this
painful,
is what your specialty
because she died from stage. She didn't want anybody to know she died from stage 4.
That?
And the last week or two of her life, I was literally leaving work and going over there to do dressing changes. It was like really bad. My own aunt didn't recognize me or whatever. And I think you remember what made it so tough is that she died in May, like May 24th, the 25th.
Then right after that,
the next month, almost to the day, my dad passed. And so that whole time,
it was a tough time.
It's kind of a blur. It's a tough time.
Yeah. But you did it. You hung in there and you hung in your faith.
But it's hard when it's family, when it's like, I could have helped you. I could have, and I would not have done surgery on you. I would have directed you to somebody I trust, because I do think it's very difficult when physicians and surgeons take care of family members, and it's actually recommended that you don't do that unless you're in a situation
you're
where
emotionally
invested in a
That's,
rural community or something like that, where you are the only doctor. It's too many doctors in Atlanta for that, but I never would have personally taken care of her.
But that's probably how she looked at it.
I definitely would have advocated and been there for her. And it's like, there were so many steps between, there was a lump, and then now we're at stage 4 with a wound healing issue,
What's the one thing that you feel that you have that separates you from other physicians in your field?
Empathy, compassion. I think a lot of people look at surgeons as these cold human beings who don't care. All they want to do is cut. And for me, it's, establishing that relationship and establishing that trust. My relationship with God, not that it's something I go running through the halls about or whatever, but it's something that I know that I have. Absolutely. And so I think that definitely helps me and carries me as I take care of people, Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm happy that I finally got a chance to
I'm happy too.
talk to you, man. This has been a long, long time for me.
I know.
One other question that if you were to grab the young adults that come to your office and they've hit stage 2 or stage 3, and if you can shake a message into them, what would be that message that would shake them into like waking up? Because I know in my community, the Eritrean Ethiopian community, we are very secretive about our health issues. And it works very closely with the African American
Isn't it
community.
funny how we are across the diaspora?
Oh my
Like,
God,
all the
it
same,
is.
right?
It is so crazy. And so I often, I don't discuss too many things. I'm very private about a lot of stuff. But if a question arises, I'm never afraid to answer it. So I don't really cover it up. I remember, and I know, Mike, I told you this at some point. A friend of mine called me, and I thought about this morning when I was getting ready to come here. A friend of mine called me and said, "Hey, you okay? How you doing?" And I was like, "Hey, I haven't seen you in a minute." This is after I opened therapy, so he comes all the time, but I'd known him way before that. And he's like, "Hey, are you feeling okay health-wise?" And I'm just like, he doesn't know what I have, so why is he asking me? Where did he hear it from? Because I really don't tell anybody anything. So, and then he goes, "So nothing new is going on with you?" And I was like, "Dude, what do you want to ask me? Just ask me directly." Again, he's from my country, so he's trying to be, he's trying to go around about it. But he's, oh my God, a full-fledged breakdance. But the message in that for me was that he heard a rumor. Mm-hmm. He didn't know how to approach me because it's such an uncomfortable conversation with anyone to have. And then I finally said, "Yo, but what's going on?" Because my initial thing was like, usually he calls me when he comes back into town and he's coming to therapy, so we're going to hang out. So he's asking, like, "Are you going to be there tonight or tomorrow?" Right. So I'm like, "Yo, is everything okay?" But, and he's like, "Well, I heard something and it really bothered me that, that you're going through this and you didn't tell me." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I heard you have cancer." I'm like, "I don't know if you remember me telling you this." But I said, "I do?" And he's like, "You don't?" And I said, "Okay, pause. Where did you hear this from?" And he said, "It's been a few weeks." He said, "I didn't know how to call you, but I wanted to check on you." But then he's like, "That's what I heard." And I said, "No, I have an autoimmune disease. I don't have cancer." And I said, "I have good days and bad days, and I have horrible days. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I've had for 23 years. Yeah. So it's not something that just showed up. I am fully capable of beating this, and I have beat it the last 23 years. And the last 17 years have not taken pills from it." So a whole different podcast. I know, I get it. But it's the fact that he felt uncomfortable to ask me, the fact that there was a wrong information that was circulating, that made it worse than it actually was. And we don't talk about it. So one of the things that one of my elementary school best friends from back home called me and said, "Hey, listen, I have a friend who has similar autoimmune system as you. Mm-hmm. Do you mind talking to her? Because she's going through it. And I feel like you've had a hold of it." And I said, "Well, it's either I beat it or it beats me. So as long as someone is coming with that attitude, we're okay. It's that victimized, I need help, I can't fend for myself. That it's very difficult to work with because that's never been my style." So I ended up talking to the girl, super cool girl. I've known her, by name, but never really actually met her in person. And come to find out, her symptoms are similar, but it might not be exactly what I have. But the reason why I'm telling this story is to say how in communities, illnesses are covered up as if you caused it. Back in the day, AIDS came and it was like, okay, you got AIDS by having sex. And so then it was like, okay, you can get it from touching them. And then all this stuff. So then if someone had AIDS, oh my God, automatically they had sex with somebody, until they realized, oh no, you can get it from needles too. You can get it from these other things. So for my people in the community, I urge you it doesn't have to be publicized on social media. Clearly, I'm not posting it. But a tribe is needed. And sometimes people in your tribe would have known something that you didn't know. So I'm a documentary junkie and I read a lot and I'm constantly updating my knowledge. And I'm always reaching out to people that I find near me to ask questions because I don't know everything, even with my own condition. So your message to the younger
Ask questions. Ask questions. Like your family, your parents, especially. Ask questions. Know what the family history is. Are there any cancers or any other illnesses in the family? What are they? What happened to this person? We keep some of these things so guarded. One thing I do love is that recently I've noticed that people are a lot more open about it. But I remember when my dad's mother passed a couple years ago, it was during COVID, and they were like, well, grandma had this and grandma had cervical. What? She had what? Like nobody.
It was like a shocker.
Nobody's gonna tell
it's
anybody.
Not that it's funny. It's just like you're confused.
What's wrong with y'all?
And how old were you at this time, or at what level of your profession were you in?
A practicing surgeon.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, nobody was gonna tell anybody. Like, what do you mean she dealt with this?
It's a good thing you're not in my family because I'm
family members going through things, and you're like, what? You find out about it after the fact, and you're like, pause. Nobody was gonna tell me. Like this is important to know. There are some people who don't know their family history, right? And maybe you're adopted, or maybe everybody's gone for whatever reason. Genetic testing. I'm a strong advocate for genetic testing. It's recommended that every patient that gets a breast cancer diagnosis gets genetic testing anyway. I think it's a very informative and objective way of knowing what you're at risk for, because then now
it gives you a background.
You have power, you have information. And so now okay, I'm at high risk for XYZ, so I need to get this screening every year. I need to make sure I do this or don't do this. You know what I mean? And very surprising. I know 75% of people with a breast cancer diagnosis, 75 to 80, do not have a family history. Of that 20 to 25%, that do have a family history, approximately 5 to 10% of those people will have a genetic mutation that contributed to their breast cancer. The teaching used to be, Ashkenazi Jewish, they're the ones that have BRCA, blah, 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 blah. But what we do know is that our women across the diaspora, especially my African American women, my Caribbean American women, our rates of BRCA mutations rival that of Ashkenazi Jewish. And so this is stuff.
So it's actually higher?
Just as high. Yeah. And so this is important stuff to know, right? And so ask questions, require it,
How do you deal with?
And even when you link up with somebody, now you're in a relationship, now you're getting married, ask questions. Like, so what do you have? What runs in your family? These are things to know, especially when you're attaching yourself to a person.
Right. How do you deal for people? Now, I'm very blessed. I come from a family that are very outspoken when it comes to healthcare and advocating for me. I have had a brother that stayed with me until I got out of hospital, like for 11 days. He was there every single day. And I remember one of the doctors actually was like, well, there's nothing we can do for her. She needs to go home. And he was like, do not touch my sister. I'm going to chop you up. Do not touch my sister. But if people don't have, and I say this often, and I know my team has heard me say this repeatedly, and some of my friends have heard me say, I am blessed beyond anything that I have the circle of friends and circle of family members that would advocate for me every day. I look around when I'm at the hospital and what y'all do, and I go, oh my God, like, how did I get here? I'm so grateful. But then right away it hits me. There's so many people that don't have the advocates or support system or that tribe that show up for them. How do they do it? And so my question to you is, what should be your next step when advocating for yourself, when you don't have anyone else to advocate for you? What should be your next step when they are not diagnosing something that you feel something is wrong in your body?
There are patients, and patients ask me this a lot. So first of all, you just hope and pray that you find somebody that's just as invested in your health as you are. Because I'll have patients say to me, even if they have somebody there with them, I thought I did my research, but what do I need to know? What am I not asking that I should be asking? And I love when patients ask me that.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Because I think it's a really good question. And as a surgeon, the quarterback of the team, they're going to ask me everything anyway. What does chemo look like? What does radiation look like? And so I'm like, all right, this is what you can expect. These are the things that we're going to be looking for. This is what they're going to do. This is, and so I think that's a good question to ask. A lot of the times, if I'm giving a talk or somebody wants me to speak and they say, especially when it's for lay people, what are the next steps? I have a list of questions, and I tell people, screenshot this slide. Like, am I a candidate for plastic surgery? Does insurance pay for this? Do I need radiation or not need radiation?
Right.
How many radiation treatments will I need? Do I need chemo? What determines that? Are there any other? I give them a whole little thing. And so ask your physician if you can record. If you think you're going to forget something and it's one of those consultations where you're going to get information, ask if they can record. I don't care if my patients record. It doesn't bother me unless unless you're somewhere where they have a very strict policy about not recording. I let them record. If they don't have a family member, but they're with them or they're alone, but they have somebody they want to call to also listen in, I let them do that. It makes them comfortable, and then there's another set of ears in case you forget something. And so there are things you can do. Not all physicians do it, but there are things you can do to make the patient more comfortable.
So going back to my question, if I was a patient and I felt neglected by my physician, I know from my personal experience, I know they have patient advocate services.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
What's the next step outside of that? Because you're on the inside, I'm on the outside, so I only know about the patient advocate. And even at that, you might not get the answer that you want or the deserving of what you want from having things be corrected. But for your health, because that's more emotional, right? Like for me, the patient advocate walked in and they did their conversation with me and, with my brother and stuff. And then they were kind of like, okay, we're going to research.
And most patient advocates do well. I think at that point, if you think that you're in a situation where you are being neglected or mistreated, then your only other option is to leave.
Yeah.
And you either show up to an ER and you say, even though most people are going to say, don't do that. But the truth of the matter is a lot of people do that. And so they'll show up and say, hey, I was getting treatment here, but X, Y, Z. Or you go and do your research and you get another physician. Outside of that, what else can you do? Unfortunately. And this is coming as somebody who's in the medical field. That's all you can do. But I do find that most patient advocates are very, they're pretty thorough.
Yeah, I had a good one. It was one that was confused, but I had one that was good. I've been around for a while. I don't know what to say.
I'm like, oh.
Child. I mean, they missed my fibroid and then missed my gallbladder issues.
Fibroids are tough.
It was, and I'm a thin person, so it's like if you're missing things here, I don't know I don't know what to say. Yeah. So, but where could they find you if they wanted to learn more about you?
You can find me on social media for now. Other amazing things are coming down the pipeline, as you know. But for now,
I'm not allowed to tell you.
Absolutely not. Social media.
But we will bring
at Ryland Gore MD.
There you go. Ryland Gore MD.
Across all.
I thank you so much for this conversation. Yes. I hope you guys were able to get some information out of it as much as I do every time I talk to her. I have a cheat sheet because she's usually around and I'm usually able to grab her and ask questions. However, what a delightful morning to have been with you and to ask questions. And I hope it was very helpful for you guys. Please share, subscribe, and follow. We hope to see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.